All right, everybody. Guided Q&A, my friends. Yep. Oh, let's set them up and knock them down. All right, guys. Quick housekeeping. I announced the sessions incorrectly last time, backwards. So, insurance and compliance. Over here, we've got Jeff Mongeon from Winooski Insurance, and we've got Andrew Subin from Vermont Cannabis Solutions. So, insurance is something that is a huge topic of interest as things continue to evolve. I know people are going to continue to come in, but this is going to be a really interactive panel because we know that people have specific questions, and we are happy to have access to this information. I'll remind you, I will come around with the microphone when you have the questions, because I know that we want to make sure we get them all on tape. So, insurance and compliance. Jeff, I'm going to get it started by just maybe asking you to introduce the company and give a breakdown of what you presently insure as far as cannabis.
Sure.
Yep.
Everybody hear me? Oh, holy cow. Wow. Yeah, my name is Jeff Mungeon, so I'm the president and principal at Winooski Insurance. We are a traditional independent agency, been around since 1983. Was, I guess, stumbled into the hemp insurance 3-4 years ago with a couple clients that were at that time new. Got into the nitty-gritty of what the coverage was like at that time. I can tell you that it's evolved a lot even in 4 years, and I continue to stay on the front edge of it the best that I can by reading different trade journals and kind of paying attention to what's going on the West Coast, since that's been driving a lot of what happens over here. So excited to be here. Happy to answer questions as we go through. I am staying here with my family, so I'll be poking around. So if you don't get a chance to get your question answered, hunt me down, and I'll be here today through tomorrow morning. So.
My name is Andrew Subin. I'm with Vermont Cannabis Solutions. We're a business consulting and law firm in Burlington, trying to help people with start their cannabis businesses and run their cannabis businesses. As far as the topic of insurance goes, it's great to have a guy like Jeff who's willing to work with the industry. This has been something that has been a problem as the industry gets started, is finding professional services that are willing to work in the industry. So it's great to have Jeff here, and he's willing to work with people who are starting businesses in the cannabis industry. Insurance, and I guess the other topic here is best legal practices, but we met with Jeff, my partner Tim and I met with Jeff, and he pointed out some of the things that people might not think about in terms of just your normal insurance not covering you when you're doing things related to your cannabis business. So your regular car insurance policy not covering you when you're driving around with your crop and taking it to be processed or taking it to retail. And that could obviously be devastating if you were getting an accident on that trip and you weren't covered. So these are the kind of things people are maybe not thinking about, things that our law firm and that Jeff's business is here to help you think about as you get into it. And I guess we'd open it up to questions if there are any.
Oh yeah, well I'll
There's going to be a ton of them.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I'll come around with a mic. I'll get it started. So somebody comes to see you guys at Vermont Cannabis Solutions, says, I'm starting a business. I want to make CBD edibles, right?
Okay.
Or just any kind of general, sort of where do you get people started, and where do you get people started as far as the 101, whether you're growing or company?
So the first thing, and I'll just answer from my standpoint, is I'm going to ask you if you have a business plan. If you don't, in my opinion, I'm almost wasting my time. When it comes to business, any kind of business, you need to have a plan in place going forward, and you need to approach it like any other business. So similarly to the way I'd treat somebody that comes into my office that's starting a roofing business, and they've never roofed before and they want insurance, I'm not inclined to really do too much with that person. So I encourage you, before you start anything, to you'd want to see somebody like Andrew or Tim at Vermont Cannabis Solutions to help you get your contracts in place, get your business plan in place. revenue forecasts. You know, what is your business going to look like in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year plans? That's what I look for. I can tell you that it takes a lot of time and effort to go through one of these insurance processes with somebody. So to just get somebody insurance, it's almost in this industry a month. It doesn't happen in a day, a week, 2 weeks. There's a million questions, of which if you didn't plan, you're going to be able to answer almost none of them. So I would recommend for those that are already in the business probably have different questions, but those that are looking to get into creating a CBD oil or a topical or something you smoke or ingest. A lot of things to consider there from the moment that it's the seed is planted to the moment that it's consumed and after it's consumed. So that's my general question to that, and I'll let Andrew take it from there.
I guess we take it even one step back. Before you have a business plan, we want to see that you have a business. So, I mean, we see people in our office all the time we see people at all different stages. But somebody, as Eli puts in his hypothetical, who says they want to start a CBD and they want to start a CBD company to sell edibles, my first question for them is, have you formed a company? Because that is really the first step. Most of the licensing requirements, and a lot of these businesses that are starting now are getting involved in CBD and getting involved in hemp with an eye towards the tax and regulate that's coming down the road with a possibility of getting into THC, high THC cannabis sales. So even now, you got to have a business entity. You can't do this as a sole proprietor. You can't run these businesses out of your kitchen. You should. I mean, you may run it out of your kitchen, but you got to have a company. You got to have an LLC. It's going to be a requirement of. It's going to be a requirement of getting a license. When we have a licensing infrastructure, you're going to be required to have that LLC. So that's absolutely a first step. Also to just protect your own liability and in the event that you get sued. So that's our first step is to form an LLC. Absolutely first step. You're going to need that also to try to raise money. And then we move quickly from the formation of an LLC into some idea of what Jeff is talking about is like, what are you planning to do? What is your business? What is your business idea? I think for a lot of these CBD businesses, boy, there's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of opportunity. A lot of the ideas are great ideas, but come with challenges. So I agree with Jeff. One of the first things you have to do is to have a good business plan and to know how much money you're going to need, and how you're going to get, what the return on the investment is going to be. The second question that almost immediately comes up is, do you have a business? Do you have an LLC formed? Second is, where is it? Because as we move into a tax and regulate system, and even now with growing hemp and making CBD products, the nature of your local law enforcement and your town is going to be really important in determining how easy it's going to be for you to run your business. So the very first question is, where are you doing it? If you're a farmer and you have land, well, that land is where it is, so you don't have a lot of choice. But if you're going to be making edibles, if you're going to be extracting, if you're going to be, if you do have choice over where to place your cannabis business, that's a huge decision. And a big part of our getting people ready to enter the industry is figuring out where is the best place when we're dealing with zoning boards, when we're dealing with town plans, when we're dealing with these kind of local regulations, and when we're dealing with local law enforcement, which towns are going to be receptive to cannabis businesses, and even in the future, hopefully in the near future, THC, recreational THC businesses, and which towns are going to be closing their doors to that. We're working hard to try to figure that out. But this idea of the geography within Vermont, where you're going to put your business, is the next huge decision that needs to be made by your new business. So.
It all sounds great, guys, but how much does it cost? Seriously, I'll ask that, and then I want you guys to have some questions. But maybe just give us kind of an estimate. You're making your business plan, starting an LLC. Generally speaking, what are you encouraging people to budget for insurance in year one? Let's just say basically if you're going to grow a crop and start an LLC.
So I've never seen a premium less than $1,000, and it rarely is the beginning. So if you have a real business, by real business I mean you have some employees, and you want to actually cover everything, you don't want to leave gaps in your policy. You're talking a minimum of $2,500, and it starts from there. I mean, I've worked with some clients whose insurance premiums are well over $100,000, and that depends on the amount of payroll you have, whether or not you want to insure your crops, if they're even insurable, whether it's inside or outside planting, whether or not you want to cover products completed liability, which is something I'm sure we're going to talk about today, whether or not you want to have directors and officers insurance coverage if you have a board of directors after you've raised your Series A or your seed round, whether or not you want to have cyber liability to cover your liability for protected data on your online sales. These are all things that you have to consider. And when I talk about these things, and the reason I say have a business plan, have a plan in place, have your business registered. I start talking about these things to somebody who doesn't have a business plan, and they look at me cross-eyed like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that sounds like it's going to cost money. Well, yeah, excuse my French, no shit, So this is no different than any business. There's major exposures. In fact, there's more because there's unknowns. And the unknowns create all kinds of things, and we can go into what that could possibly look like, and I can talk hypotheticals because I've seen some stuff. It's your house, it's your bank account, it's your retirement, it's your kids. It's all the things that you want to protect, and insurance and well-worded contracts and good business practices are what's going to make sure you keep that stuff.
Yeah, the formation of an LLC is not very expensive, and if you want to approach me after, I can show how our pricing works for that. I just have to agree with what Jeff's saying, because as soon as you start doing anything, what we've seen a lot, in this industry is that people are coming out of a background of not using contracts and doing everything with a handshake, and everybody likes each other in the industry, which is great. I love everybody in this industry too. It's really fun to be here and to meet everybody. And that's how business has gotten done between cannabis growers and their customers for years, with a handshake, and it's been great. But you can't do real business like that. So the next expense you're going to run into is, or what we're telling people, and it is an expense, is for legal services, because everything should be contracted. And that handshake deal you had with your buyer, we can't do business like that anymore. And as this business gets real, you got to have a written contract. You got to have a lease with the farmer. You got to have a contract for what's going to happen to the crop. What's going to happen to the crop if it fails? Who's responsible for that? What's going to happen if the clones die? What's going to happen if, et cetera? That's our job, to try to write these contracts and think of what is going to happen if this bad thing happens. That's the kind of, lawyering up, right, that hasn't not been done and leads to people either feeling burned or feeling like they lost money on a deal, or, not making what they expect. Trying to help people think of what the problems could be, that's what we're here for. And putting this stuff in writing is so that, if you make a handshake deal, standing out behind the barn, no one's going to remember. What did we say? No one's even going to remember the details. What did we say? We shook hands. What did we shake hands about? I don't know. I can't remember what date you said. You said the 17th. No, I said the 10th. That's why you got to have it in writing. So. It's just a basic business principle that this industry needs to kind of grow up quickly and say, this is what, when you run a real business, these are the things you do. You make contracts with the people that you contract with. You pay for your insurance. You pay the state for your license. We haven't talked about accounting, but that's a huge thing. Bookkeeping and accounting. You withhold. You pay your employees. You withhold their taxes. get an employee identification number, you deal with the IRS. These are the things that are part of running a legitimate business that have not traditionally been part of, growing marijuana. And so it's a learning curve, but you have to, we like to see and we like to help people approach this as a real business.
I wanted to ask a question about your comment on location of an LLC when you're forming an LLC. With regards to manufacturing, is there a possibility to run it out of a temp space initially, or is it very important for at the moment of forming an LLC to have more than a temporary space identified?
No, you don't have to identify it for the state. You can change the location of your LLC as far as the state is concerned. That's not a problem. I guess what I meant was it's important for your business plan to know what part of the state you're intending to work out of.
At least eventually beyond, say, a temporary space.
Right, yeah. The state, correct, yeah.
Over here, and then I'll work my way around. Just put your hand up and make some eye contact. I'll come get you guys next.
Yeah, hi. I'm starting a worker-owned cannabis collective. It's going to have a mobile dispensary, and I was wondering if you had any advice on the legal form of that. Is this something that we should just talk in person, or do you have any experience with worker-owned collectives, like being a cooperative?
Yeah, we could probably talk more about that privately. Are you talking about a CBD business?
More the cooperative, I think, structure, maybe as it relates to cannabis, CBD, and then maybe eventually the other stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't see any problem holding you back from doing something like that legally. As far as the insurance issues go with a mobile dispensary, I think you said, that raises some concerns for me. I don't know if Jeff had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, so from an insurance perspective, you said a few things there that be careful. I think it's definitely possible, but you're going to want to explore the structure of that. Again, to kind of review kind of what I said earlier, your co-op's going to need insurance, probably lots of different kinds of insurance. Are there employees? Probably. If you're going to have a mobile dispensary, everybody says I'm going to do it myself with no employees. And again, are you really a business? Maybe, but probably not. If you're going to have any kind of scale, you're going to have people working for you. So you're subject to all of the workers' comp laws that everybody else is responsible for upholding in the country, really, but in the state you're located in. It's mobile. You have an auto exposure. So that thing moves. It's movable. Your product is movable. So there's finished product on that mobile apparatus. How is the product locked up? Is it in a safe? Is it coverable even because of the safe requirements and the vaulted room requirements that are out there in the insurance industry today? Maybe, maybe not. You may want to take some of that product off the mobile device when it's sitting there and put it in a locked safe so it's covered if something happens. Are you crossing state lines? Boy, I hope not. Because these things are all, if you're not following the state regulations, and it's all state, if you're not following, as soon as you cross the state, all bets are off unless you really understand the other state. So anytime you're shipping your product or moving your product across state lines, there's a lot of concern in the insurance industry about that, and you may be uninsurable depending on what you're shipping. So
What about nonprofits? Just because people ask us about like 501c3s and nonprofits, any legal exposure, or assuming they're doing an actual nonprofit,
sure.
right?
As far as wanting to be a nonprofit like a 501c3, that's not possible right now with cannabis products at all, whether it be hemp or or THC flower. 501c3 is a section of the IRS code. It's federal, and it's cannabis, no matter what, is still illegal under federal law for almost all purposes except for this limited use of industrial hemp that has a less than 0.3% THC. But forming a 501c3 is not going to be possible. And having a charitable organization whose primary business is having anything to do with cannabis is not going to be possible right now. Yeah.
Hold on, we're gonna go here with a mic just because we're filming and want to make sure we record the questions too. I'll work up to you guys next.
So regarding the idiosyncrasies of municipal legislation in this state,
Yeah.
Just subjectively speaking from what you guys are seeing on the ground,
Yeah.
Which communities, the top three, are most hostile to these developments?
Well, I don't know that I can name out which three are the most hostile.
One Newport. Newport, I believe, is the only. I'll answer that one just because.
Yeah, you
they
might
were-
know more, Eli, than I don't know.
Right.
Well, we're working right now. Vermont Cannabis Solutions right now is working with Greenbridge Consulting to create a spreadsheet of every town in Vermont that's going to look at law enforcement. It's going to look at who's on the planning board. It's going to look at what things they've allowed so far and what they have not allowed. And so, we're coming up with that's like a proprietary answer for our clients. I hate to say it, but it kind of is. That's a very $1 million question that you're asking. Yeah.
I got two here, and then we'll work our way back.
If you're getting a private label done and somebody else is making the CBD topical product for you, what sort of insurance would I need in order to retail it and distribute it?
So your label is going on somebody else's, oil. Okay, yeah. So you'd want products. The main what they call it is products completed liability. So if picture a situation where somebody gets sick by taking it, or they take what the dosage, they thought the dosage was supposed to be, and it affects them differently. That's the products completed liability coverage that you would both want, okay? Both want, but a well-structured contract between yourself and the manufacturer may push that liability onto them.
Brings up something I was working on last week, a contract just like that, which said who's responsible for it's specified at which point in the process, who's responsible for testing, what happens if the test comes over 0.3. It's just the type of contract that you would need. I mean, your contract should be fashioned in a way that to relieve yourself of liability for product that you get that is over the legal limit. Or
that contract is going to be better than any insurance policy you can buy. A well-structured contract is going to be. I mean, you want to have it, but that contract is everything. And I would say think of in a general sense, think of other applicable things that are in the mainstream and how are they done. And if somebody's making a granola bar and somebody's getting the granola from a farm, like that contract you look at that contract because they're going to be similar, except now there's what if and I'm just going to throw a claim situation out there. What if I'm selling a CBD product and I'm telling people that I can't get high from it, but I get high and I drive a truck for a living and I take a drug test and I fail it and I get fired. Ooh. I've been a truck driver for 25 years. That's all I know how to do. What's that lawsuit going to look like?
This is an actual scenario, by the way, that has happened in the state of Vermont. I'll just throw that in, unfortunately.
What advice would you give to your client, or what knowledge do you have about a grower taking its product to a processor to get it processed and then be paid for it if that's what's going to happen? What kind of assurances does a producer expect from a processor, in your opinion, or how would you advise your client in terms of being protected and being paid for his product?
Well, I mean, it would depend who my client is. I have a client who is a processor, and he wants an arrangement where he doesn't ever own anything. He's performing a service. He's extracting an oil from the farmer's crop, and the farmer's going to own the crop. The farmer's going to own the oil. The farmer's going to own the waste. He wanted a contract which said, I don't ever own this, and I'm not testing it. And the farmer is certifying that it's all under 0.3 and that it's all legal. And this processor is saying, this is not my problem. And the farmer is acknowledging that sometimes processing can spike the THC level. And if that happens, the processor still gets paid. I mean, I wrote that contract for the processor. If I was writing the contract for the farmer, I might have written it a little bit differently. I mean, a contract can say whatever you want it to say, whatever the other person will agree to. And so, these are, I left it with my client to take to the farmer and see if the farmer was okay with that. I don't know whether the farmer was willing to sign that contract, but, we write contracts on behalf of our clients and try to protect our clients from bad things happening to them. The other guy should have his own lawyer. So, and a contract can say whatever you want to agree to with regard to this, and assuring you're going to get paid. If you were the farmer and you wanted to assure that you were going to get paid for your crop after the processor took it, I would say a lien on the oil that was produced, so that he couldn't sell it if he didn't pay you, something like that.
But there's really no protection for a farmer after they've turned over their product to a processor, other than good business practices and hoping they're going to get paid. Because even though you might have a contract, that processor might not be able to produce or provide or pay for the product. Right?
Well, I mean, look, there can always be a breach of contract, and there can always be a one party that fails to live up to its requirements in a contract. The contract should say, if that happens, if you go out of business, what happens to the crop, or what happens to the oil you produce? If you fail to produce oil, I still get paid. If I was representing the farmer, I'd rather say, when you take my plants, I'm going to get paid then. And then I don't care what happens.
It's probably insurable too, right? So it's a matter of who is possessing it, and contractually who owns that product at the time, and if they have insurance for it. Like for instance, if I take possession of a product I don't own, you're the farmer, I'm the processor. If I have what's called Bailey's coverage, which is, think of a dry cleaner, I take your shirt, I dry clean your shirt, I own it, I ruin it, I owe you for that shirt. Because I'm legally liable for it. It's in my care, custody, or control. I screwed it up. I ruined it. I lost it. It got stolen. Whatever peril, enter peril here. And so at that point, if I have a Bailey's coverage for that, I can insure it. But that's going to be in the contract. Who owns that product?
Or, it could be in the contract that the processor is required to carry that type of insurance.
Which they hopefully would be. I mean, it'd be crazy not to require
which would be right. Absolutely expected term of a contract like that. That the stuff is covered if the processor's building burns down while he's got your stuff or whatever.
I got 3 more quick ones, then I'm going to make you guys end with good news because you're scaring the shit out of all of us up here.
No.
It's really quite a bummer up here.
Just be legit about what you do, and you'll be fine.
Stephanie Smith with the Agency of Agriculture. If you're growing a industrial hemp that meets the definition, this goes to your zoning question. If you're growing industrial hemp that meets the definition of industrial hemp, so less than 0.3 delta 9 THC, so on and so forth, on a dry weight basis, it's considered an agricultural product, and therefore a town cannot regulate you for growing that agricultural product, so long as you're registered with the agency as a producer. That growing, processing, processing maybe, well, let's not talk about that, but growing and storing that product is considered an agricultural product.
I have a question. I know this is not supposed to be the way it works, but I have a question for you, actually.
Oh, well, for everybody or for
Yeah,
me?
it's for you, but I think it's valid.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm growing hemp.
Yep.
So industrial hemp, let's call it. Crop insurance, because not available,
Not
right?
yet.
Yep.
No.
So
That's
there you
true.
go. I knew that. I was hoping that question would come up, but I wanted to point that out, that it's not available yet.
I really appreciate your comment, and I think I should clarify, and I totally agree that industrial hemp is not regulated at the town and local level. I totally agree with that. That being said, a town that's got a police department that's hostile to the idea, a town that has got a planning commission that's hostile to the idea, even though the town has got limited legal ways to prohibit it officially, you don't want to do business there if you can do business somewhere else. Some of these towns would love to have you, and some of these towns don't. And that may be true for industrial hemp. As we move to a tax and regulate recreational industry, these towns for sure will have the ability to say, we don't want that in our town. So if you're thinking about down the road, you might be interested in THC products, then that's I guess what I was talking about before. That's where this town issue becomes so crucial. But also, I do think it's still valid in the hemp to have a town that's working with you and not a town that's out that is kind of pissed off at what you're trying to do.
Yeah, the reality of the situation is we're really talking about an industry that's been underground for half a century or more, and it's in the process of becoming legit. But we're in that process. We're in this gray area at this point. And I think there's a lot of people who have been growing recreational cannabis that may be shooting at some point, hopefully a few years down the road, where they can be a craft grower or that sort of thing.
Sure.
So what can people like that do now where they are certainly on the gray side of this process? And where do things like co-ops come in? Is it possible that might be a way of spreading out some of the financial burden of insurances and that sort of thing? So where does someone like that, if they're preparing to become a craft grower legally a few years down the road, what can they do now? Can they form an LLC?
Well, they could form an LLC. If we formed an LLC for somebody like that, we would list the purpose of the LLC as any lawful purpose. They wouldn't be able to form an LLC saying, I'm going to commercially grow THC, recreational marijuana. That's not a lawful business purpose. You can form an LLC and say any lawful purpose, and you don't have to tell the state exactly what you plan to do. So that's a good idea anyway. Right now what you can do to get ready is you're allowed to grow your 2 plants and your 4 immature plants. So there's nothing illegal about you growing your own plants if you want to, and that's preparation for getting into the industry, I suppose. As far as collective gardens and trying to grow that number of plants per person in the household or living communally and saying, well, we got 20 people living here, so now we can grow 120 plants, that is not permissible. I don't think that is going to fly. I think, as everybody knows, we've seen people trying to use the gifting provisions. You are allowed to gift excess marijuana that you grow from your personal grow. That can be gifted. It can't be sold. But there have been some creative approaches to that. And I think there are ways, as long as it's a legitimate gift, there are ways to get samples of your product out to the potential market as a test. Let's put it that way.
The guidance from the Attorney General directly was advertising. Social media, Instagram, Craigslist. Those are going to be major issues. If you are getting into that, the THC side of things.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a nascent business environment right now with all of this being formed as we speak. And so there's not a lot of players in insurance and legal representation. So my question is, what happens if you have 2 clients that either of you represent, something goes bad between the 2 of them and client A wants to sue client B? What happens with the whole conflict of interest?
Well, this gets into the rules of professional conduct for attorneys, and we can't represent 2 clients who have an adverse interest towards each other. So we would have to withdraw from representation of one of those clients if 2 of our clients got in a position of having a lawsuit against each other. we probably should withdraw from both, depending on who was the first client and et cetera. But yeah, that gets into some pretty detailed body of professional responsibility and professional ethics for attorneys. You know, I thought you were going to ask a different question, which is helping two clients apply for a limited number, two or more clients apply for what may be a limited number of licenses. We're considering how we're going to deal with that. I think geographically, you know, we can help clients in one county and in another county. They're not necessarily competing against each other. But yeah, we're going to have to deal with this question of what if two of our clients are trying to get the same license.
We don't have the same requirements. I mean, if you're driving on the road and you have Geico and somebody hits you that has Geico, happens. And from the perspective of, you know, professional conduct, you know, we're never gonna, unless the customer gives us permission to discuss their business with somebody else's, we may talk in hypotheticals, but we're not going to disclose like anything about the other clients. So whether or not, for us anyway, we're a brokerage. So, you know, we may have one customer with one carrier and another customer with another carrier in the same industry. So then in that case, it would just be blank insurance company versus blank insurance company if there was any question of, you know, who's at fault and that type of thing. Sometimes if there's clear-cut fault, it's easy, right? It's like that one's going to pay, but sometimes they're like, well, I don't think I'm at fault. I think they're at fault, and that's called subrogation, and the carriers will whack it out between each other, hand-to-hand combat, and whoever comes out, you know, wins. Or they split it 60-40 or something like that.
All right, you guys have given us a lot of, donated a lot of very valuable time and hourly here, so I really appreciate it. Before we thank you, I just want to let you guys know we're going to do our keynote at 2:15, so everybody's got a chance to grab something to eat, continue their conversations. That's going to be back in here at 2:15. I encourage you guys to get some food. Hold on, but before we do, I need you guys to end a lot of doom and gloom. So maybe tell me something surprising, because Jeff, I know you initially were not in this kind of cannabis scene. Jeff actually used to be my baseball coach way back in the day, which is amazing, and I'm so pumped that we're I'm pretty pumped that we're doing this now. But tell me something surprising, you know, or something unique that you guys have come across specifically in the hemp CBD kind of world.
Well, I don't mean to be negative. I mean, in general, when you do anything, there's liability associated with it. So it's just, and this is just an evolving field. There's just more exclusions out there. There's more holes in the policies than there are in typical fields. So, but I think it's exciting, and that's one of the reasons. It isn't. The brokers pay us horribly for these types of business insurance policies. Just so you know, it's more about getting into the. I just enjoy being on the edge of something, and call me crazy, but I think it's pretty cool. And quite honestly, you know, two of the more controversial things that I've done, you know, I'm an agency president, you know, we're a $20 million agency, we're not small. So for me to come out here and talk about this stuff is a bit edgy as in insurance. But I did also sponsor a burlesque festival one time. So that's probably the second most edgy thing I've done. I don't know. So.
Well, you know, from my perspective, I just think this is great. I'm so excited for the cannabis industry. I'm excited for the regulated recreational industry. You know, what's happening with hemp now to me is super exciting. I think Vermont has the opportunity to be one of the leading players in industrial hemp and in recreational cannabis. And I think it's a hugely exciting place to be and time to be here and now. You know, the fact that all these unanswered questions are opportunity for you guys. I mean, these gray areas are an opportunity for you guys. They're these regulations which are still being written. That means we can help get them written the way we want. That's a great opportunity for you. I think, you know, everybody who's here at Hemp Fest this weekend is in the right place to be, you know, a part of this new industry in Vermont that's going to be great for Vermont, great for the country, great for everybody. So, And, you know, like we already said, it's an industry that has dealt for 50 years or more on a handshake, and those are good people. I think these cannabis people, the ones I've met, are good people. And I'm thrilled to be, you know, a part of the industry, and to just meet everybody else who's part of the industry.
Thank you. That's more like it, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you. Round of applause. All right.